Hey everyone, welcome to the Dance Diaries. I'm Carole.
And I'm Kim. Welcome, everyone.
Happy 2024 New Year. Oh my gosh, isn't it exciting?
I cannot believe how time flies. I'm looking so forward to this year, this 2024.
So am I. You know, I can see the path ahead in terms of some good dancing, some competitions, show dances. I'm really, really excited.
I am too. So I have a question for you. Have you begun to map out your year, your competition year, your practice year, dancing year?
I have. So interestingly, I worked with my instructor last week, and I made as a first priority trying to focus on what we were going to concentrate on this year. I streamline my dancing. Usually, I take it down to one dance style, maybe a second alternative. But so here's my plan. So he and I had a good chat. Definitely a show dance that I'm doing in May of 2024. So we're working towards that. And then we had a really long conversation around, what other style of dance we should be focusing on. And then in the end, we arrived on American Smooth. So after a long conversation and trying to figure out what would make sense based on the years and the time we've invested, we're going to return to American Smooth.
And why? Just out of curiosity, what was behind that? It's a great decision, by the way. I 100% back up that decision. Just knowing you and knowing what you love and how, everything, your body. And
a couple of years we competed already in American Smooth, so I've already invested a lot of time into the fundamentals of what it is I want it to do. I'm at a closed gold level, so we've already put in quite a bit of time. But there came a point where I was like, do I return back to international standard? And I was trying to make a decision on one or the other. And so we had a really long talk, and he was so good to point out some of the positive things that he could see in American Smooth that I would really thrive in. And that's, the accenting certain moves, how I'm very good at, making sure that I can articulate like the whole style of dance. And so after listening to that, he said, we could probably put in the other styles of dance into show dances so that you could get a little bit out of those, anything that I want to do, which is what's happening in May. So I'll be doing a little international waltz that I'll do in May. But for competitions, the plan will be American Smooth.
I love that. And I think that is it's a great plan for you, but I think it's a great plan overall. And one of the reasons why I think it's a great plan for you is because American Smooth, you're a performer. You love show dances. You love to do that. And I think my personal opinion, American Smooth allows you that ability to show your personality just a little bit more than international standard.
He did say that. He was like, well, now remember, in international standard, you would be in hold all the time, which I don't mind, guys. It's beautiful style of dance.
Yes.
But in terms of my other number one desire, which is performance and showmanship, it would probably come out more in American Smooth.
Yeah, nice.
How about you? What's your 2024 sort of focus?
Yeah, so actually I haven't gotten into the studio to sit down, but here's typically the way I do it each year, the way we do it. I like to zero in on what I'm interested in focusing on for the following year, and then I'll have that in my mind, and then I'll go into the studio and I'll talk to my instructor about what I'm thinking, and then he'll give me what he's thinking, and then we'll zero in on something. So I know what I'm going to go in with. I don't know what I'm going to come out with per se.
Okay.
Yeah,
but at least the important tip there, if we think, is actually having a conversation with your instructor. Would you say?
Definitely tip number one in the very beginning is to have that discussion. Try to plan out your desire and his desire for you in terms of, he knows your ability, he knows your personality, he knows lots of things that might fit into that puzzle.
Yeah, that's really good. And beyond that, I haven't really looked at the schedule, but if I were to look at another sort of goal for maybe the next time over the next couple of weeks would be to examine what does the schedule look like for the year? When is my instructor available actually to do that? Or when does some of the other dancers in the studio plan to go do a competition? So sometimes I would look at that because it's not just about when I'm available and free, even though that's part of a big picture. Sometimes we go as a larger group.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. I have a question.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
My nose is
Okay, we'll come back. We're gonna keep the recording going, but I'll splice it in.
So it's definitely a great idea in the very beginning, as early as you can get back into the studio and start planning, because it does require lots of planning. So lots of times, whatever competition you're going to choose, number one, they want payment up in advance. So you have to
Yes.
plan for that fiscally.
Budget
For that. You have to look at vacation time if you're working, and if there's anything important going on during that time that you're going to be competing. Because also, I always say the week or two before competition, everything else goes out the window. Because you were so being so focused. So you have to allow for that time as well. What about you, Carol?
Actually, if I go back to the planning of the schedule, that's one of the prime reasons I actually moved from a franchise studio to an independent studio, because there are way more times in the year to choose for competition. I felt like in the franchise I was in at the time, it always collided with where my busiest time was professionally in my career. So choosing that is really important, having choices.
Yes.
So yes, I do plan that. But the budget too, if you think everyone in advance, it's not just the timing you go to the comp, it's like nearly a month ahead to submit for that. So you have to sort of think of that in your mind as well as your goal planning.
Right. And then we did a segment not long ago on costuming. We have to be concerned about that. What are we going to wear? Is your costume fitting properly? Does it need, updating or cleaning or anything like that? Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze now.
Oh, it's all part of the podcast. Too much. But the costuming. Okay, so for the costume, I like what you said about what did you say? It was reimagining your costume. Like, let's say if you have, for me, let's say I have an American smooth dress that I've been trying to either upgrade, sell, figure out what I'm doing with. Well, I'm at the point where it's a color that's good for me, but not popular, let's say, for other people. So I haven't been able to sell it. So that might come back in my repertoire for me to look at, and maybe I can redo it, add sleeves to it, do something with it, and sort of refresh it. I think that's the word you said. So refresh my costume so that as part of my budget planning is not something that I'm worried about, but I can get the costume ready.
Right. Yeah. Very, very good point. And you can maybe do something to make it different looking so that the judges don't think that it's the same costume from like 20 years ago or something.
Well, or there's also, you can change up all of your accessories that go with it, all of that.
See?
But I find that's probably shorter term, the accessories and stuff. But the dress itself, I have, in the early days of my competitions, that can be super stressful if you do not have your costume, laid out and you know what you're doing with the costume.
That's right.
Which has led me in the middle years to rent. So sometimes I rent a dress, which has helped me sort of get over that hump of not, figuring out if I'm going to use something that exists in my closet or trying to have something new and refreshed. Sometimes I will go and rent a costume for a couple of days, and that actually helps me with the planning and budgeting of my competitions.
Right. Not a bad idea. Have you ever run into a situation where you rented a dress and then you saw the dress the same dress on the dance floor?
That has never happened.
Yeah.
No, actually, I mean, I think the ones that I see the most, I'm pretty much aware. Like there is some of that, like there's a lot. I wear a lot of blue, but blue is super popular. So I think if I were to go to a rent-a-dress, it may not be that I go renting.
Right.
Sometimes I'll know what most people are wearing these days, and I might try to find something different.
Got you. That's a great idea. How about mindset and body preparedness?
So we had some previous episodes about, I will say first, body preparedness. So if I know that I'm going to do American Smooth, whether there are sleeves or no sleeves, I might definitely try to prep for what it is that the physique of my arm looks like. That sounds crazy, but for me,
no,
it
doesn't sound crazy. But
certainly the stamina that we have we also have a podcast on that. I would, especially with American Smooth, be wanting to make sure my stamina is up to snuff, because there's so much traveling across the dance floor that you have to do. And then I would also, for my footwear, make sure that I am practicing, I think even more so in my American Smooth shoes, more than Latin and in international Latin American rhythm. I would do it more with smooth because I would want to make sure that that can keep up with the traveling and the speed in which I might be, going around the dance floor.
Right. Wow. So what might you do to prepare, for your stamina before that? What are some
So-
of your things that you do?
Right. So you and I have talked about that. I might certainly do some extra sessions at the gym to where I would practice. I do my own rounds on my own. So I do practice that. That's for the mental ability to remember what it is I'm doing with my actual routine.
Yep.
So that makes
Especially at your
my-
level.
Right, and it makes my lessons more productive.
Yeah.
100%. So I come in ready, and lately I've been going in early to my lessons, and I practice ahead of time so that when I start with my instructor, we can get going right away, and we're not spending 10 minutes of a 45-minute lesson trying to warm up.
Smart.
Right?
That is, I mean, that's probably one of the smartest things because I always say it takes me one lesson to warm up, but then it takes me a half of one lesson really to warm up. But if you go into the studio a little bit early, that's a great idea. Warm up on your own, guys. Right?
Yeah, warm up on your own for sure. So if I were to look at the mindset, though, you asked me about mindset, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that I am visualizing that this is the right decision for, let's say in my case, American Smooth, that I'm putting all of my effort and attention to, that's going to be materialized. If I plan for the competition, whether it's every quarter or every half year in my case, then what am I planning for leading up to that, and how will I be ready? And choosing, how much I plan to compete for the number of heats, being in a scholarship round or being in a championship round, and making sure that that is arranged also with the availability of my instructor.
Yeah. Question for you: what is typically your goal when you're heading into a competition?
To just nail it, to feel like I have performed it and nailed it, that the way that I have been completely coached and taught to do. That is what I do. Now, I know people say, well, aren't you going in there to win or what have you? I would absolutely ideally like to make it to the finals is where I head in when I get. And finally, if I'm able to make it to the top 6, then that final round, talk about mindset. If you know you've made it, then it's full on.
Then
where
it's full on.
Then it's
Yep.
full on to give it my best round possible.
Right. When you get that far, you definitely want to take top, number 1, 2, or 3.
Would love
for
it.
sure.
Would
Yeah?
love it. But
Yeah.
I know we've had like back and forths about whether, do we go in there with a competitive mindset? It's not about that. It's to to make it your absolute best
that
performance.
you can do. That's exactly. And
Yeah.
I agree with that. I love that.
You're big on mindset and mindfulness. So
Yes.
talk to me about what goes in on your preparation leading into whether, somewhere down the year for your competition.
Yeah, sure. So I begin. Well, I'm always in my mindfulness. So it's not as if I'm going into competition now. Let me get mindful. So I'm always doing it. But for purpose of competition, but I do this even going into the studio. I'm visualizing. Mostly, it's about visualizing my outcome. Visualizing what I want to have happen. How do I want to show up? What outcome do I want to have? And it doesn't necessarily mean, going in there, taking first place. That I agree with you. I always want to be a better performer, a better dancer than I was in the last competition. But I also want to make sure that the time that I spent in the studio translates to, the time on the dance floor. And that has happened to me a couple of times where I've left the studio getting ready for competition and feeling so strong, like I was just gonna nail it, and I went out there like stage fright, and yeah.
What's that about? How do
Yeah.
you avoid that?
Mindful, right? So I probably was maybe a little bit too cocky, and I wasn't doing my mindfulness. I don't really remember what
Right.
that was about for me, but that's probably what it was.
But when did you if you get into the competition, you get freaked out? Like, is that, or do you feel it the night before or the weeks before? Where does that start rolling in?
The minute I make the decision to compete,
Okay.
yeah. The
Yeah,
minute
you
I
know
make the
what?
decision to compete, and I'm constantly telling myself to turn those nerves into excitement and to focus on my outcome, and I do, and I take that time focusing on again, how I want to appear, what does my dancing want to end up like? So it's all about that for me.
Actually, it's not to say it's a new way for me to look at it, but sometimes I might skip that step and end up somewhere else. But I think
How'd that work for you?
Yeah, but I think that for many of our listeners, that is a wonderful tip to think about, because many people do get freaked out. And some people, it takes a long time. If it's your first competition, even your second one, where you say, all right, I'm ready to bite the bullet and sign up, right? And in that case, of course, your nerves are going to be there. So I think this tip is really important leading into it, where you can focus on that outcome and try to lower down the jitters, work hard with your instructor, do everything that you have to just sort of, because you're never going to be 100% ready, guys. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe people disagree with me, but it's like anything else. Sometimes you just have to go try and do the best you can,
100%.
right?
And I'll even take it a step further to make it a little bit easier. I actually have a mantra, and it's a mantra whether I'm getting up to public speak, or whether I'm going to go in front of a large client, or whatever, I'm going on the dance floor, or I'm going to, I'm about ready to do a show, a dance show or something. But it's about releasing the subconscious mind, and I'll encourage everyone. It's much easier when you have a mantra mapped out in your mind, and it gets into your subconscious mind, and you just say it to yourself over and over, and just interchange the situation or the event, and it helps you to not forget. It helps you to remember to do that, because again, it makes a big difference. And I'll say something. You said something just a minute ago that was really important. When something about, when do you let go of the nerves or something? Is it when you make that decision, or when you're getting on the dance floor? One thing I do the night before is I do like a release meditation. So let's say I'm starting to compete Thursday night, Wednesday night, I'll do a short meditation for myself, and it's a release. So now I'm releasing everything, and I'm getting onto the dance floor tomorrow, and I'm dancing. And then there's a mantra before that about releasing the subconscious mind to do all the best I can, and, to entertain and all this stuff. So it helps, because I know, like we just talked about, probably in the times that I felt I didn't perform as well as I would have liked, I didn't do my mindfulness. So very important.
But I think that for you in your life, that is a regular thing you do all the time.
Yes.
Right? So I think it's a great tip for anybody who's trying to, let's say, adapt something new into their routine for pre-competition readiness would be a wonderful tip. Here's what I'll do. I'll go in, I'll watch club night. I'll get an idea of what's happening with the feel of the floor. I will look at what's happening with the energy in the room. So you and I like to talk about energy.
Yep.
I want to see what the colors and lighting is like at the competition.
Yep.
And then that sort of gets me into the spirit. And I do it to sort of watch and appreciate what's going on. If I'm someone who's watching, obviously not if I'm a participant.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But not to get too much off track, I'd like to see what the competition dance floor is going to look like. But then truly, when I go back, let's say if I'm staying at the venue at the hotel, or if I come back home, I really am an organized person. So I like to make sure everything is really laid out and everything's ready for the actual day.
Yeah. So, yes. Agreed. Agreed.
So everyone, when you're getting ready for 2024, like we are, there are some amazing tips that you guys can think about going into the planning of your year. Yeah. So the first one, which I've already done, so check box off for that one, is have a conversation with your dance instructor about what your 2024 goals are going to look like, especially if they include a competition, and also the timing of when you'd like to do that, what's available. But most especially for me would have been the style that I'm focusing on.
Right.
So that's one important tip.
Very important. And what level, I don't even think we talked about this, but for me, I want to compete now in all open silver. Right. So
that's a great goal.
Yep. And so chances are that I will be competing a little bit later in the year because of it. So those are things to take into consideration.
That's a big jump, definitely. So that's, I think the planning time must come into play for sure.
Yes. Yep. And then as you just said, we were talking about the timing, right? The timing. So
for the timing, we talked about that earlier. If you're planning to compete, let's say every quarter, every half year, and based on even the decision you made about the style, you have to plan not just for the event, but plan it to know when are you on vacation, when are you professionally free to be able to compete. If the style of dance, you have to determine what time of the week that's in.
Yep.
So for any competition, things might start as early as Wednesday, Tuesday. Sometimes it's on the weekend.
Yep.
And then the budget that goes into how much in advance you must be able to plan to have your financial budget ready to, to line up.
That's right. That's right. And who else you might want to be competing alongside in your studio? Sometimes
Yeah.
that comes into play too.
In my studio, ideally, if there's quite a few of us going at the same time, it might be advantageous also budget-wise for the expenses, but it also is more exciting because you are going with other people, you are there to support them, and I find that, for me, that's truly invigorating.
Yep.
So I like having a crowd around. It's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Anyway, so
And you had mindfulness as
Oh,
well as a top item.
So that's a very, very big item. Starting to prepare in the mindful way, and if you're not doing mindfulness every day, which a lot of people aren't, I would encourage start that from the time that you decide on which competition that you're going to. Right away, it has to be done right away.
Absolutely.
So anyway, girl,
2024.
looking forward to it. Let's talk really quickly.
Yes.
We have some great, exciting guests lined up in the next quarter, in the next half year. And I think actually we have a lot of really amazing guests. So you have to keep checking back.
And some really cool ones that we're going to keep as a surprise.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that we get that out to you. But we are very happy and could not be more proud of the way that we've been going at this for a little while. So,
Yep. So like and subscribe and share even if you don't like us. And
you.
happy 2024.
Woohoo! Bye.